It's 11:40 on a Tuesday night. Renee Castillo is standing in her kitchen in Westerville, Ohio. She's in her robe. She's holding her phone. She's looking at a number she's only looked at 4 times in the last 10 years. She just turned 58. She's run a public high school for 11 years. She's signed off on 1,000 report cards. She's sat through 1,100 faculty meetings. She talked down 2 fights in the cafeteria this semester alone. She hasn't been late to work once. Not since she started this career, back when gas was $1.20. She is, by any measure, a person who shows up and does the work. The number on her screen is $94,000. It's not a number that scares her. It's a number that confuses her. Because she did what she was told to do. She enrolled in her 403(b), that's a retirement account, the kind teachers and public employees get, her second year on the job. She never touched it. Not during the divorce. Not when the roof went. Not the year her son was in the hospital for 6 weeks. $94,000 feels like it should mean something solid. Something she earned the right to stop worrying about. She just doesn't know yet what it actually means. She's about to find out. My name's Frank. I'm not here to make you feel something about that number. I'm here to do the math nobody ever sat down and did for Renee. Nobody's done it for you either. A balance by itself doesn't tell you anything. What tells you something is what that balance turns into. So let's turn it into something. Here's the math. There's a rule most financial planners still use as a starting point. It's called the 4% rule. You take 4% of your savings out each year. Do that, and your money has a reasonable shot at lasting 30 years. It's not a perfect rule, but it's the most common one in the business. So we'll use it. Now let's look at the national numbers. What's the median retirement savings for Americans 55 to 64? Median, not average. Here's why that matters. The average gets pulled way up by a small number of people sitting on 7-figure portfolios. The median is different. It's the number in the actual middle of the actual country. That's the one that means something for most people watching this. This past February, the National Institute on Retirement Security released a report. It used U.S. Census Bureau data. It covered every employed American aged 55 to 64, not just the lucky ones with a 401k. All of them. And here's what they found. The median amount saved for retirement is $30,000. Run that through the 4% rule. 4% of $30,000 is $1,200 a year. Break that down by month, and it's $100 a month. $100 a month. That's what the typical retirement account in this country is actually built to produce for someone Renee's age. Not what it feels like it should produce. What the math says it produces. Renee's ahead of that. Her $94,000 puts her closer to a different group, people who already have a workplace account up and running. Vanguard tracks its own retirement plan participants. Their most recent data shows the median for that group, ages 55 to 64, is $96,000. Run the same math on that number, $3,840 a year, or $320 a month. She did everything right. And the honest math says her account, as it sits tonight, will hand her an extra $320 a month. That's on top of whatever Social Security pays her. That's the real number she was standing in that kitchen looking at, whether she'd done the arithmetic yet or not. I want to be fair about something, because it matters. Retirement accounts aren't the whole financial picture. Plenty of people in Renee's position have home equity. Maybe a small pension. Maybe a spouse with their own savings. That's real, and it counts. But here's the thing about the retirement account specifically. It's the piece most people are most wrong about. It's the one number that looks big enough to feel safe. And it's actually nowhere close. That gap, between feeling and fact, is where this video lives. Here's where most people get it wrong. Renee included, standing there at 11:40, doing math she didn't ask to do. You think the problem is that you didn't save enough. The actual problem is different. Nobody ever showed you what enough was supposed to look like. Not until the number was already sitting in front of you. Too small to ignore. Too late in the evening to feel good about. Nobody handed you this math at 30. Nobody handed it to you at 40. You're getting it now, at whatever age you are, from a guy talking to you on YouTube. That's not your failure. That's the system's. Maybe nobody in your life is having this conversation with you about money. Not your bank. Not your employer. Not your kids, who'd honestly rather not think about it. If that's you, that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe. Because what we're about to cover is what you actually do with that number. And that part matters a lot more than the number by itself. People use an old image for the early years of saving. Picture a boulder, and you, pushing it up a hill. In your 20s and 30s, that boulder barely seems to move. You put money in. The market does something, or it doesn't. The balance creeps up so slowly it feels like nothing's happening. That part's true. But it's temporary. Compound interest is patient. It pays out the most for the people who give it the most decades. Renee doesn't have decades. Realistically, she's got somewhere between 7 and 12 years before this money needs to start producing income, instead of just sitting there, collecting it. So say she decides tonight, standing in that kitchen, that she's done watching the boulder sit still. Say she decides to push hard, starting tomorrow morning. She isn't pushing the same hill a 28-year-old pushes. She's pushing the same boulder up a hill that's 3 or 4 times steeper. Why? Because compound interest needs time more than it needs money. And time is the one thing she can't go buy more of, no matter how hard she pushes. Let me show you what that looks like in real numbers. Take a 28-year-old who commits to putting away $500 a month. Invest that at a conservative long-run market average, call it 7%. That person has roughly 37 years for the money to compound before a typical retirement age. Run it out, and that $500 a month turns into something in the neighborhood of $900,000 by age 65. Now, that's an illustration, not a promise. Markets don't move in a straight line. Nobody can guarantee a return. But it shows the shape of the thing. Now take the same $500 a month. Same discipline. Same assumed market average. But started at 58 instead of 28. Only 9 years left to compound. That turns into something closer to $75,000. Same monthly amount. Same effort. Roughly 1/12 of the result. Why? Because the hill the second boulder is climbing only has 9 years of slope left on it, not 37. That is not a reason to give up. People hear, compound interest needs time, and they translate it into, I'm too late. That translation is wrong. Here's what it actually means. The size of the push matters enormously more for Renee than it ever did for that 28-year-old. She doesn't have 30 extra years to let a small push slowly compound into something large. So she has to push harder now. The hill got steeper, and the clock got shorter at exactly the same moment. The effort it takes to move real money at 58 is genuinely, mathematically greater than it was at 28. That's not a guilt trip. That's physics applied to a savings account. You think the problem is that you're behind. The actual problem is something else. You've been quietly running the math of a 30-year runway in your head. That's the only math anyone ever showed you. But what you're actually standing on is a 9-year runway. Those are two different math problems. They require two completely different decisions. Behind implies you can catch up by doing the same thing you've been doing, just for longer. What's actually true is you need to do a different thing now, on purpose. This is where the national data gets uncomfortable. I'm not going to soften it. Renee wouldn't want me to. Neither would you. That same IRS report also measured something else. How close people 55 to 64 actually are to standard retirement savings benchmarks. Financial planners use a rule of thumb. By 60, you should have roughly 8 times your annual salary saved. Here's what they found. Workers aged 55 to 64, on average, have only hit 19% of that target. 19%. That's not behind by a little. That's behind by 4/5 of the goal. And it's happening at the exact age where the goal is supposed to already be mostly met. Maybe you're sitting there right now, running your own numbers. Maybe the percentage you land on looks a lot like that 19. If so, you are not the exception. You are the median. You are most of the country your age. This is not a personal failure happening to you in isolation. It's the typical outcome of working a full career in this country. The researchers behind that report put it plainly. If people aren't saving through their employer, they're probably not saving at all. And even the ones who are, like Renee, are landing at numbers that don't match what 30 years of steady paychecks felt like they should produce. I know what some of you are thinking when you hear a number like that. It's too late. Why bother pushing the boulder at all? I want to push back on that directly. That conclusion is the one thing that guarantees the bad outcome. 19% isn't a verdict. It's a starting line that got moved later than you wanted. Is the math from here harder than it would have been at 35? Yes, we already established that. But harder is not the same as impossible. The next part of this video is where I show you exactly what you actually have to work with. Here's where this stops being a bad news video. There is real, specific, legal leverage sitting in front of you right now. It didn't exist for that 28-year-old. 3 levers. You can pull all 3 in the same month if you want to. The first lever is the catch-up contribution. It's the most direct one. In 2026, anyone with a workplace retirement plan can contribute up to $24,500 a year. But if you're 50 or older, the IRS lets you add more on top of that, a catch-up contribution of $8,000. That brings your total to $32,500. And if you're 60, 61, 62, or 63 specifically, there's an even higher version called the Super Catch-Up that allows an extra $11,250 for a total of $35,750 a year. Why does that provision exist? One reason. The people who wrote that tax law understood something. Someone in their 60s needs to be able to move more money faster than someone in their 30s. So the government built a wider road for the steep part of the hill. Most people never use it. Most people don't even know it's there. Renee qualifies for the standard catch-up right now. Say she pushes her contribution up toward that $32,500 limit and holds it there for the years she has left. She isn't adding a little to her $94,000. She's fundamentally changing what that balance turns into. The second lever is debt. People skip this one because it feels less exciting than investing. But here's the math. Every dollar going out the door to high-interest credit card debt is a dollar that can't go into the catch-up contribution. Same with an auto loan on a vehicle that's losing value while you drive it. Paying down a credit card carrying 22% interest is, mathematically, a better use of your next dollar than almost any investment you could make with it. Cleaning that up before retirement isn't a side project. It's not separate from the real plan. It is the plan. The third lever is timing. Specifically, when you start claiming Social Security. Claim early, at 62, and you lock in a permanently reduced monthly benefit. That's for the rest of your life. Wait until your full retirement age, or push it further to 70, and that monthly check goes up substantially. And it's guaranteed income. It doesn't depend on what the market happens to be doing. Think about someone whose retirement account is producing $100 or $320 a month. For that person, the difference between claiming at 62 and claiming a few years later can matter more than almost any single investment decision they'll make this decade. This is also the moment to be honest about what people think they need, because that number is usually wrong in the other direction. Surveys keep finding the same thing. Americans believe they need something like $1.46 million to retire comfortably. For most people watching this, that figure isn't a real target. It's a number large enough to make you feel so far behind that you stop trying before you even start. You don't need $1.46 million. You need your actual number. Your expenses. Your Social Security timing. Your housing situation. And what your specific account, pushed as hard as you can push it for the years you have left, can realistically produce. That number is achievable. $1.46 million, for most of you, was never the assignment. Renee didn't fix her retirement standing in that kitchen at 11:40 on a Tuesday. Nobody does it standing in a kitchen. Here's what she actually did. The next morning, before first period, before the first kid walked into her office with a problem that wasn't his fault either, she opened her benefits portal. And she changed one number, her contribution percentage. She didn't max it out that first week. She moved it up enough to feel it land differently in her next paycheck. Then she put a note in her phone, move it again in 3 months. And again after that. That's the whole move. Not a dramatic overhaul. One decision, made deliberately, that compounds the same way the money does. And that's the actual difference between people stuck at 19% of target and people who claw their way to 60, 70, 80% in the years they have left. It is almost never one heroic year. It's the decision to stop running the math of someone with 30 years left and start running the math of someone with 9. Maybe you're watching this and you don't even have what Renee has. Maybe you're one of the millions of people that an IRS report counted who don't have access to a workplace plan at all. The math still applies to you. It just runs through a different account. An IRA works the same way. The 4% rule doesn't care which account the money sits in. The principle is identical. Figure out your real number. Then push harder than the calendar wants you to. Here's what I want you to do this week. Not this year. This week. First, calculate your own number. Pull up your retirement account tonight. Find the actual current balance. Run it through 4%. Then divide by 12. That's the real monthly income your savings, as they sit right now, would actually produce. Most people have never once done this math. Do it tonight, even if you'd rather not. Second, call your HR or benefits department this week. Ask one specific question. What's the maximum I'm allowed to contribute, given my age? And what would it take to get there over the next 6 months? Don't ask whether you should. Ask what's possible. Let the number answer the should for you. Third, are you 50 or older and not already using the catch-up contribution? Set up the increase before your very next paycheck. Even half the catch-up amount, started this month instead of next year, is meaningfully different math by the time you actually need it. The math at 57 is different from the math at 27. But the math at 57 still works. You just have to be willing to look at it. So here's my question for you. Tell me in the comments. When you ran your own number tonight, the real one, was it closer to Renee's or closer to that $30,000? You don't have to put the exact figure. Just tell me which side of it you landed on.